Hello everybody, Brother Wolf here, and on Tuesday the Winterfest event will officially end, and I see a lot of people running around those snazzy new skins, but did you know that the Revenant skin, Morgesh skin, Aurora skin, along with Everfrost Bellacor, Kwang, and Cereth all have lore that directly tie them into each other, and not only that, but we can also establish a timeline through that lore. And that timeline starts with Frozen Hearth Aurora. It's a cool skin, so we're going to go through some of the color variations, and I'm going to read the tagline. Aurora's band of pillagers dragged the ancient throne before the fire. She sat upon it, toasting to new treasures and great adventures. Yet there was an unnerving chill in the air. Now, also, real quick, all the kills and the gameplay footage you're about to see, not me, my girlfriend. She was nice enough to record all of that and edit it as well, so shout out to her. Now, what we can gather from that tagline is a couple of things. First and foremost, this is not the regular Aurora that we've seen. This is a separate Aurora, either in a parallel universe, parallel time, or something else, but we know that this cannot be our Aurora. This is just way too soon. Our Aurora grew up in a city. This Aurora, they say, is gathered out by a campfire. Our Aurora just wouldn't do that. She's way too prim and proper. Another thing to note is that Aurora did not find the throne herself. In the lore, it said that two other people, or so many people, actually found the throne and then brought it to Aurora. However, there was no reaction from the throne until Aurora herself actually sat on it. Now, I find this really interesting because of what Aurora's powers are, as well as the fact that Aurora's skin is the only skin that doesn't actually have any animation changes. Aurora's powers are of ice, so could it be that maybe the throne didn't move until there was another Ice Queen or Ice King on the throne? I don't know. But we do know that Aurora wasn't the one to find it, but she was the one to get it to react in some fashion. Now, whose throne is this? Well, that would be Frost King Revenant, and the lore for him is the old king rose from his frozen tomb, and sensing another presence on his throne, summoned an army of undead to reclaim it for him. And this is really, really interesting, because this also tells us that despite this guy being able to sense things from the afterlife, and literally being able to come back to life, Aurora is still so powerful at this time that instead of going and getting it himself, he has to summon an army of undead to go do it for him. Or maybe without the throne, he's not as powerful as he once was. We have no idea. We have no idea who this old king or this version of Revenant was. We don't know what his kingdom is. All we know is that he was powerful enough to rise from the grave to go and find what he considers to be his. And not only is he powerful enough to do that, he is also somehow strong enough to use his power to raise, in this case, 3 different soldiers from 3 different periods of time to fight his battles for them. And last but not least, I think it's really important to remember that Revenant isn't actually just one person. Revenant is actually the combination of a symbiote spirit coupled with a strong-willed human. So we have no idea how this symbiote came into contact with this king, but we can be pretty certain that this king isn't just himself. Now, as for the soldiers of the Frost King, we start with Everfrost Cereth. The old king's fiercest soldier rose from her grave with a scream of rage. She would never slay enough to quench her thirst. Now, this is a really interesting hero because it shows how powerful Frost King Revenant has to be. Because even Sevarog wasn't able to fully taint Cereth. That lore was released just a couple days ago by Epic via Twitter, and it showed that Cereth and Sevarog had a battle. Sevarog tainted Cereth. In order to cleanse herself, Cereth underwent a ritual that literally split her soul in half between the light and the dark. So in order to have Cereth underneath his control, he would have to control both halves of Cereth, or have one half completely dominate the other, in which this case I'm assuming that it would be her darker half. Something else to note is that Cereth would be the first person that he resurrected. We can tell this because of the look of her armor, and also her being his fiercest and most loyal soldier would probably make him the number 1. But we can pretty much guarantee that Cereth is the first person that he would have resurrected, leading us into the second person, which would be Kwang. And the reason I say Kwang is the second is there's actually an evolution to these skins if you look really closely. And the one here would be Kwang's lights on his skin. Now, the tag for Kwang is those who practice disciplines in life remembered it in death with perfect deadly form despite the rot in their bones. Now, this makes it kind of hard to tie directly into Revenant, but because of A, the fact that it's an Everfrost skin, B, it shows the same kind of ice effects on the skin and the blue eyes that kind of tie this theme all together, as well as if you look really closely to the minions that are going to come up, one of them is going to turn blue. He did it just now. All of the tier 3 skins, as well as the Everfrost skins, do this to the minions at some point. When you activate an ability, when you use an ult, sometimes when you just hit them, they will all of a sudden be consumed with like this blue fire, just like Revenant's head. And I have no idea of what that might be, but my guess would be it's the same kind of energy that Revenant used to resurrect the soldiers that fight for him. Now, something else that I find really interesting is that Kwang canonically is actually from a different land. So we don't know if he ever even came across this version of Revenant. Maybe at the time that this was, or the universe that this is, maybe they're closer geologically somehow. I have no idea how these two came into contact, or if they ever even did. With this next hero coming up, we'll find that Revenant actually has a talent for resurrecting people that he's never met and who have come long after he was dead and buried. And that leads us right into Everfrost Bellacor, whose tagline is "Many years had passed since the time of the old king, so he raised not only ancient soldiers of his own, but those of a new era." Now, really quickly, if you look at her picture, you'll notice that one eye is brown and one eye is blue. Now, I find this really interesting because every other character with an Everfrost skin has two blue eyes, so I don't know why they cared enough to make sure that this one eye was brown. Maybe Revenant is resurrecting too many people, maybe his powers are at a limit, maybe it's just the fact that they like Bellacor's original brown eyes. I don't know, but it is kind of an interesting feature about this skin. Now, we were discussing evolutions of the skins earlier as well. With Cereth, at the very beginning, she was using full plate armor and a mace. Kwang showed up afterwards with slightly more advanced armor, including some LEDs it looked like on his armor, but he was still using a sword. But Bellacor is full on using gadgets, tech, and a gun. So we can clearly see that there are at least 3 different time periods at work here. And last but not least, Northern Mystic Morgesh. Those who died in the forest were always found. Though none cared for them in life, she cared for them in death. Now, I find this really interesting because with necromancy, you gotta remember that you don't just raise the dead. You also have to store them and keep them and make sure that they don't rot on you. And that just doesn't really seem to be Revenant's gig. Now, we can't really directly say for a fact that that's what Morgesh does, but I kind of think that's where she plays a role in here. I'm not even sure if she really serves Revenant or if she just serves the land that Revenant happened to be buried in. It's really kind of hard to place Morgesh in all of this. We know that she is found in forests. We also know through the lore of Narbash's Winterfest story that she was involved somehow in this form, in her Winterfest form, with his exile and with his entire story. What we don't know is how she became the Morgesh that we know prior to this, or even, again, if this is in that universe at all, if this is completely separate. But if it is separate, then how does this form of Morgesh run into Narbash, and that's official canon? A lot of questions are kind of raised with Morgesh. Unfortunately, more questions than she's going to answer, but that kind of seems to fit with the character. Going back also to Bellacor's brown eye, we also don't know if Revenant's hold over these beings is indefinite. He might need somebody to continue to refresh or to keep up these corpses, and that very well could also be the position that Morgesh plays. I think that I've kind of tapped myself out on ideas of where she could play in this grand role or in this grand story, but if you have any other ideas or something I may have missed, please, by all means, leave it in the comments below. So to wrap this all up in summary, beginning to end, Aurora's band of ruffians find a throne. They find the throne, they bring it to Aurora, she plops her holy ass into the throne, she offends the Frost King Revenant, he somehow gets bodies. We might they might be provided by Morgesh. He resurrects Bellacor, Kwang, and Cereth. And that's all we know. We don't know how the fight ends. We don't know if he gets his throne back. We are currently waiting maybe till Winterfest, and we'll get back to you then, see if there's any more lore on what happened. And at that, I think that's all 6. I think that is all of the Winterfest skins that were handed out that have lore that attach them to something else. And after reading it all, I gotta say I'm really happy Epic did this, because there's not always a lot of lore in the games, and this is one of the first times that we were able to go to different places in the game and put something together that has a cohesive story, a beginning, a middle, and an end. So thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please leave a like.